longer participate and rename yourself.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Greetings, everyone. We'll just wait a minute or two till more people join us, and then we'll start the Labour Council Delegates meeting. Greetings, everyone. We'll just wait a minute or two till more people join us, and then we'll start the Labour Council Delegates meeting.
Talkative group we got tonight. Hi, everybody. I guess I should have left that for John. Sorry, John.
Yeah, we're up to 50 folks on the call now, and I know other people will be coming on. So just give it another minute. We don't do a physical roll call of officers because we can just keep a note from who's on the line. But Jeff Irons is sending his apologies for tonight.
There's somebody on the phone at 905-271-8522. If you'll let us know who you are, we can rename you. (271-8522).
Okay, I think we'll get started. Welcome everyone to the October meeting of the Toronto and York Region Labour Council. We start with reading the harassment statement by Jennifer Huang. But before that, it's Autumn Festival that she wants to let us know about. Jennifer, you have to unmute.
My apologies. It is Mid-Autumn Festival for those of you who are Chinese or have Chinese members or Chinese family members. We are celebrating cake, and I'm just getting this open. Harassment statement. Mutual respect, cooperation, and understanding are strongly held principles of the trade union movement. We will neither condone nor tolerate harassing or discriminatory behavior that creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive environment and undermines the dignity or self-esteem of any individual. An injury to one is an injury to all. Speech or conduct which is racist, sexist, homophobic, or discriminatory in any way is unacceptable to trade unionists and only serves to divide us. Our policies and practices must reflect this commitment to equality as we work together for justice and dignity in our workplaces, our unions, and our community.
Thanks, Jennifer. Each meeting, we do a land acknowledgement. We are meeting on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the New Credit, which is subject to the Dish with One Spoon Treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and the Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. This week was Orange Shirt Day to recognize the pain that was caused to Indigenous peoples by the residential school system. And it's notable that the throne speech contained a commitment from this government to again pass the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. That is a fundamental document that lays out the relationship between First Nations and Indigenous Métis people and the countries in the world. It was passed by Parliament 3 or 4 years ago, and the Senate, the conservative group in the Senate blocked it. And we want to make sure that we will continue to raise our voice, asking the federal government to recognize and put into effect the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. Mohammed's going to talk a little bit about the Zoom process.
Yeah, so first things first, if you're, for your name, it would be really helpful if you were to label your name or rename your name on Zoom so that we can see your full name and your local. So where Janice Aritza has local, OPSU local, I can't say the whole thing, but at least we can have it on our attendance. So if you can just please rename yourself. Thank you, Vicky. And then that'll just help us a lot with attendance. The second thing is to remind people is that we're going to mute everybody other than when you're speaking. We'll unmute you at that point, or I'm not sure if you have the ability to unmute yourself. I don't think so, but I think we'll unmute you when you want to speak. And if you do want to speak, you put up your hand, which is your raise hand function. If you don't know where your raise hand function is, it's at the bottom right, but if you click on participants, you'll see it there as well. And that's how John's gonna recognize you. And if you're on the phone looking to raise your hand, then you hit *9, and then that raises your hand if you're calling into the meeting from a phone. Other than that, if there are any first-time delegates, please raise your hand now, so then John can recognize you. Oh, there's Ingrid Bushinger.
And Ingrid, were you indicating your first-time delegate, or did you have your hand up to ask a question?
Sorry. No, I think I pushed the wrong button by mistake.
No worries. Okay.
No worries. Okay, I don't see any first-time delegates or hands raised. So John, back to you.
Okay, the minutes of this meeting were circulated each month. There's an e-blast that goes out to everybody who's a delegate with the minutes and the agenda and the statement. So those minutes have been circulated. They're moved and seconded, and are looking if there are any errors or omissions in those minutes. And seeing none, then we'll go to a vote.
Can I say something? Sorry, John.
Yep, go ahead.
Kim Nasello, Local 5111.
Uh-huh.
I believe in the credential reports that Local 5111 was not recognized.
And those came from the last meeting, or there's them tonight?
At the last meeting.
Okay, well, Maureen, you have to unmute.
Was that a new credential form? Kim?
No, we've been here for nearly a year.
Okay, so on the credentials report, it's only if it's a new credential form that's been sent in that month.
Oh, okay, my mistake then. Sorry.
No
No worries.
worries.
I thought it was like every month it was,
No, it's just if there's new credential forms.
okay, my
Okay,
sincere apologies.
no worries. No other errors or omissions, then we'll go to the vote. And if we can put up the vote function. Okay, credential report. I think Brother Jones is on the line. Doug? Or if not Doug, then David Kidd.
You 13 delegates, IATSE Local 411, 2 delegates, IATSE Local 873, 8 delegates, OECTA Secondary, 8 delegates, OPSU Local 502, 4 delegates, and OPSSU, 2 delegates.
Okay, and you're moving that motion, David?
Yes, sorry, and I move that motion.
Okay, all those in favor of accepting that report, we'll put up the vote.
John, I'll leave the vote up for 20 seconds and then I'll close it.
Okay. I'm checking to see if Charlene is joined us.
Charlene is here. She's with us, John.
Okay, great. Okay, everybody has read about the revival of, sadly, illness and death in our long-term care system in Ontario. And I think outside of the personal impact of COVID on individuals and our families, the most shocking thing of this pandemic has been the unbelievable number of tragic deaths in long-term care, particularly in Ontario, the conditions that workers were asked to show up and work in, the failure of those operators, particularly the private operators, to ensure people had decent working conditions, that they were able to work full-time, and the model that has become exposed in long-term care of tremendous precarity and, in many cases, poverty wages. One of the people who's been leading the fight to make dramatic changes to long-term care is Sister Charlene Stewart. Charlene is the president of SEIU Healthcare and also president of the SEIU in Canada. She's been relentless in fighting for her members in long-term care, in demanding a different approach by this government. And of course, we have the opportunity now, as we're pushing the federal government to bring long-term care under full public control, to really make a difference in that area. So Charlene, thank you very much for coming with us tonight. And please welcome Sister Charlene Stewart from SEIU.
Well, thank you, John. So happy to be here with you. And hi, everybody. Nice to see you. I miss everybody, and I'm sending you all a virtual hug tonight. So as John said, many of you have witnessed over the past 7 months, and yeah, we're about to go into it again, that COVID-19 has had a devastating impact on seniors. And seniors are one of our most vulnerable communities, as you know. But let's not forget, and let's be clear that there are many vulnerable communities that this virus has affected more negatively than others, including marginalized. And as you might have known, SEIU lost members during the first 5 months. All of them were PSWs, and all were women, and all were racialized women. Nursing homes were hit hard and looks like they're going to be again. Over 1,800 residents died and thousands of healthcare workers were infected. The Armed Forces, as you know, was called in and they gave a scathing report that surprised many, but was no surprise to us or the frontline workers. For decades, like John said, we've been sounding the alarm bells in long-term care, but today, for many reasons, we are in a worse position than ever before. And one of those major reasons, as John said, is because the millionaires who own and run Ontario's nursing homes have had an iron grip on the system for far too long. Many of us have been involved in campaigns, put people before profits. Well, this is a prime example of that. Those millionaires and their shareholders haven't, they continue to put the interests of their shareholders before the seniors that they care for and the workers. But for the first time in decades, and I cautiously say this, that I really do think that that iron grip is slipping. COVID-19 has definitely opened up the eyes of everyday people. The people of the province have seen seniors in isolation. They've seen workers without the personal protective equipment and have heard about the struggles that those workers have to make ends meet. They've seen the government confronted by the realities of a broken system. And thanks to the work of many unions, the media, thankfully, the residents, families have been allies with us, and others who have done great work to keep this story alive. And that's our biggest challenge, as you know. When things happen, we need to keep the story alive because people soon forget. And behind all of that pain and suffering are those large corporations that continue to fill their pockets, even as they fail their duties to service and provide a very critical service to those long-term care residents. So together we've been sounding the alarm bells about the problems in long-term care, but right now, as you know, we've got data, we've got lived experiences and real-time facts about those for-profit home corporations. And these facts are undisputable. Some of them are that first, for-profit nursing home chains, as you've heard, have and that's rising, 17% fewer staff than not-profit homes. The for-profit homes, they pay their workers less. For-profit homes have the worst outcomes in this pandemic, and the hundreds of deaths have proven that. And throughout all of that, the biggest nursing home chains paid out millions of dollars in dividends to corporate shareholders throughout this crisis. And another frightening and jaw-dropping fact is that companies like Sienna, Chartwell, and Extendicare have paid out over $173 million just this year. That's $173 million to their shareholders, and that's public dollars that's gone to them. That's money that could have gone to workers for personal protective equipment. That could have gone to increasing staffing levels that are so critical right now. And that could have gone to paying workers fair wages. But instead, for-profit nursing home corporations chose none of those things. The system's truly failed. So this summer, when the world wanted to understandably forge ahead with life, have their barbecues in their backgrounds and try and find some kind of respite and summer vacation, and forget about the losses of COVID-19, SEIU wanted the public to remember what had happened over those winter and spring months. So we did a commercial to inform and educate people about the problems in long-term care. And thankfully, CUPE and Unifor joined on that commercial, and together we launched the Care Not Profits campaign. So our government couldn't just sweep this crisis under the rug. So our emotional plea on behalf of every worker and every senior and their families was to ask the simple question of Premier Ford. Will he fix a broken system that puts profits ahead of care? Unfortunately, we all know that answer. But the good news is we have the public on our side if we have to keep this pressure up, and it looks like we're going to have to with this next surge. So if you haven't added your name yet, and share this with your families, your co-workers, members, visit the carenotprofits.ca to call on the Premier Ford to step up. I believe we have the commercial to share with you. So I want to thank all of you again for inviting me tonight, John. It's so nice seeing all of you. And remember to go to carenotprofits.ca.
Thanks very much, Charlene. Really, really appreciate your leadership. You've been a very strong and persuasive voice. Every time I've seen you on TV or listened to you on radio, you're just such a wonderfully clear voice about what's at stake here and why there needs to be dramatic change. So I think we're going to show the commercial now.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. So please remember to go to carenotprofits.ca, add your name, share that with your union sisters and brothers and friends. It's a really, really important campaign. Thanks, Charlene, as well. So we're now moving to, unless there's anything else you want to say, Charlene, before we move to our statement on Just Recovery in Ontario.
No, John, just again, thank you. And remember, those are pretty powerful commercials. They weren't real people and residents in the commercials, but what I'm saying is it takes a village, and I know that the people on the Zoom call is the village that we need. So thank you again, John, very much.
Thank you. Take care. So next, sisters and brothers are moving to the statement, Just Recovery in Ontario. And I know it's different when we mail that out as an attachment. It's not the same thing as having a hard copy when you are, walking into the hall of our delegates meeting. But we hope you've had a chance to open it up and take a look at what it does say, because it describes, in particular, the how at the federal level, with the minority government, we've been able, through mass mobilizing, through relentless pressure from the Congress and from civil society, to have the federal government announce some pretty substantial aspects of what we would call just recovery. They're committing to a pharmacare campaign. They say they're going to finally introduce childcare, although they've said that for about the last 20 years. They're talking about 1 million jobs, particularly green jobs, that are going to recover the economy broadly, and taking on healthcare and ensuring that there's standards across the country on healthcare. But we are also saying that one of the big obstacles of that happening is Doug Ford and the other Conservative premiers, who are acting out their own agendas. The most extreme, of course, is Jason Kenney, who's introduced a terrible agenda of austerity and attacking unions, attacking public service, even attacking cities in Alberta, as well as trying to make anybody who cares about the environment some kind of enemy of the state. But Doug Ford is also playing a very similar role in threatening to sabotage any climate legislation from the national level, as well as saying pharmacare, well, that's a provincial responsibility, and Justin Trudeau should just give him all the money with no strings attached. We know in sector after sector that we are still a long way from resolving the struggles that are in front of our own members and our neighbors and our families. So we're going to open up the discussion on the Just Recovery in Ontario, and you'll also see that it includes supporting education affiliates and parent groups in the fight against Conservatives, to ensure the schools have the resources for a safe October and beyond, including for Black, Indigenous, and other students of color. Urging affiliates to support the campaign to get profit out of long-term care. Lobby to ensure funding for municipal, public health, and transit services and climate priorities as provided by senior levels of government, and continue campaigning to restore and expand workers' rights, employment standards, labor rights, workers' health and safety in every sector. So let's go to speakers list. First one, I recognize Helen Kennedy from QP 79. Helen?
Thanks, John. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Thank you so much for this statement. I think it's really great. Certainly something that the labor movement needs to get behind. I just have one thing that I think is missing, and I think it's really important, is is the tenants and homelessness issues. Now, homelessness may not be, our members, but there are certainly some of our members who live in housing and who have been hit hard by the pandemic. But it is not just a labor issue. I mean, it's broader than the labor movement, but I think it's our responsibility to include the tenant rights and the fight against evictions that is huge right now. There's in Toronto an encampment support group that is providing incredible support to homeless camps around the city, not just downtown. And I think that if the Labor Council includes support for to stop the evictions, there are groups that are, following sheriff cars around to ensure that people aren't evicted, because there's, the only option for them would be to go to, to camp out. Because the shelters, although the city has promised that the shelters are all socially distanced, we know that they're not, and that was in the court today, I think. The other thing is that when Bill 184 was passed, there were 6,000 eviction applications on file. Now they've been kind of slow coming out, and which is good. But the potential for 6,000 as of the end of August, or the beginning of August, to what's happening now, when the unemployment is huge. It's double the unemployment rate. The unemployment rate in Ontario has doubled, but the most what we have to also consider is that racialized workers had an unemployment rate more than 1.5 times white workers in Canada. That was just in July. So it's also a question of equity. It's also, we know from the homeless encampments and the homeless shelters that there's a far greater proportion of Indigenous people that are homeless or underhoused and living on the streets. So that's also an important issue. And it's only just beginning. I mean, employment isn't getting any better. And with the pandemic kind of on its second wave, there might be a possibility without CERB that is finished now, that there'll be more people falling through the cracks and losing their housing. And I think this is one thing that the Labor Council could really do something about, and say that, even as a matter of saying, passing a resolution, which I happen to have, that has been passed in other Labor councils in Guelph, in Kingston. I think they were having a discussion last week about it, that we could say that we are, in favor and not in favor. We want, that is not that we need to call for a moratorium on evictions to ensure that people aren't falling through the cracks and have the support. And that's what I'll leave there. I mean, also, that we need to have on a broader level, a federal housing plan that provides housing, not affordable housing, but housing that is actually affordable for people who are on low income, who are precarious workers, and because they have a different definition of affordable housing at the government level.
No, Helen, you're absolutely right. We actually were struggling to see whether we could bring a whole resolution tonight on issues of housing, affordable and shelter. We just actually were not able to pull all of that together. We don't need a special motion to be able to send a note out about the evictions. That's already our past policy. But we do plan to the next delegates meeting to craft a statement on housing and shelters. And if you're all right, we'll reach out to you to ask for some of your thoughts on how to make that the strongest possible statement.
Sure.
Because in the throne speech, it's interesting. They finally mentioned their national housing strategy, which to me has been a joke for years. It's all about subsidizing private landlords. They finally mentioned that in the midterm, they're going to support co-op and not-profit housing. I mean, the only solution to housing affordable is taking land and housing out of the speculative market and creating it as something that's not for profit as well, whether it's municipal or co-op or nonprofit. And I just about fell off my chair when I saw them actually say that, because we've been trying to get them to pick that up for years. So excellent points. Let's make sure we're connecting, and we'll put that statement together and bring it back to the delegates meeting. But before that, we'll send out communications on stopping evictions for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. I saw Lily Chang had her hand up before, and then I'm also looking for folks in the education sector. This is also the time for people to speak up on that. Lily?
Thank you. I really do appreciate this statement. I support all the points in there, but I do want to focus on a couple of them. The supporting the taking the profit out of long-term care. I do want to thank Charlene again for her presentation. That advertisement is so powerful. It left me speechless the first time I saw it. I know from our members who work at the City of Toronto who have been redeployed to help out in long-term care, they have such an appreciation when they've come back to their base job about the very difficult work it is for the people who work taking care of our parents or grandparents. And I know that like a really renewed appreciation for it. So it's not easy work. It's certainly not appreciated enough, not compensated enough. And they were on the front line. So I really do appreciate that. And I think that whatever funds come in, they need to be returned back to programming, back to the residents, back to the workers, but certainly not into the pockets of private owners and boards. So I definitely support that. On the other issue on the funding, the lobbying for funding for municipalities, for public services, public health, in transit, definitely we saw with the CLC campaign that happened earlier, there was some success where there was monies that came to municipalities, including the City of Toronto, but that's for 2020. And 2021, you know, we're going to have problems again. And even for 2020, we don't know the impact of how much the funding will have, because the City of Toronto is still taking various actions to try to save money. They have offered a voluntary separation package for eligible people who can retire with a unreduced pension. And part of that approval process is that whatever position that is allowed to take part in this voluntary separation package, they cannot replace a position for 6 months. So they're going to be saving money on 6 months of gapping. And all it means is that the remaining workers will be busier than ever trying to do the work. The other thing that that the city is doing is they have they're calling it a hiring slowdown, but they've canceled job calls that have where people have actually received letters of offer prior to the pandemic. External applicants, internal applicants, you name it, they've canceled these job calls. And so these job calls were put out there at the time because based on the rates of retirement and attrition, the employer was planning ahead to hire people so that they could continue with the services. But canceling these jobs means that once again, there's going to be all kinds of gapping, all kinds of positions unfilled. And at a point in time when we're going to have to deal with second wave, where there's more work for frontline essential workers, that there might be, there won't be enough staff. We think there might be a problem with this. And so we think that there needs to be continued lobbying to make sure that there's adequate funding for all of these services, because these are the services that help manage the pandemic, right? The shelters, the public health, the transit, the social services, long-term care. And these are the kinds of services that cannot afford to be cut. Even the services in the back end that you don't see, like IT, they're not hiring people to replace retirees. And we have an IT department that has been working like crazy to get thousands and thousands of workers teleworking, building up their networks, building up the ability for people to continue to do the work or be called back to work, but do it from home safely. So, so I urge people to support this particular statement. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have Nigel followed by Kim.
Thank you, John, and thank you so much for bringing forward this motion and this statement. I'm a school teacher and one part of our local leadership at the Elementary Teachers Toronto. I know that some of my fellow allies on our education on ETT are on the call also, and hopefully we'll speak to this. But right now, what we've seen in education and COVID has shone a light on what's happening in our system. And it's shown that exoskeleton of how badly it's affected, especially, all children and all workers, but specifically a lot from our Black and Indigenous and people of color. Many of you have already seen much of the news reports of many of the different neighborhoods that have been disproportionately hit by COVID. You've seen how the pitiful response that we've had from this premier that has not addressed the issues. So right now we're seeing COVID cases that are coming up inside of the schools, and it's taking Toronto Public Health over 24 hours to respond to principals so they can get a hold of the parents and do contact tracing. And that's when we said every school should have a nurse. We know right now that we're not the cleaning that needs to be done. Our QP comrades are doing the best that they can to keep us safe within the school buildings, but we need more custodians to be hired to make sure that we're doing the cleaning and sanitizing the areas. We know that right now that we need more the social workers and many of the other education workers, our educational assistants, to be working with the students because of the trauma that they've gone through over the 6 months. And this government, they've ignored the parents, they've ignored education workers, they've ignored the medical experts in what was necessary to make sure that we keep folks safe. And so that's why I know how important this motion is for us. When you look at it, even things like our the curriculum that needs to be revised. There's so many different areas that we need to address right now in education, and it's just so amazing to have a motion like this come forward, that we're going to stand up to this government and say, let's fund the education the way that it needs to be put in place. This is a political battle that we're fighting, and it's always been the House of Labor that's been part of the leadership that's brought parents together with workers and the unions to fight for the working class. And so COVID, when we look forward of what's post-COVID, we've got to be fighting for something better than what we just came out of. We can't go back to what we were before. We need to be fighting for a stronger working class. And so I really do hope that we can all support this motion, and just so grateful for it being brought forward like this. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Nigel. Next is Kim, followed by Danica.
So as far as with the long-term care, I mean, I think it's just appalling what has happened through this pandemic. And I just found out that they are getting a $3 an hour raise until March of 2021. So hallelujah that they're getting this. But as far as I'm concerned, they should be getting this and then some. But they need more people in there. I mean, it's appalling that what they're doing and how it is. I mean, these are our elders. These are people that have brought us up and have, fought for our country and fought, gone through wars, gone through depressions, and, made our, country and our lives better because of it, and we're treating them like they're nothing. And them nothing, and the people that are looking after them. And it just disgusses me at how this is happening and how these people are letting them do it, and then being able to, cash that check and have no conscience and be able to do it and put it in their bank account. I just couldn't fathom that.
Okay, thanks, Kim. Danica, followed by Alim.
Thank you. So I'm a teacher and with OSSTF Toronto, a secondary high school teacher, and on the executive. And this pandemic and the return to school has put the spotlight on the disparities that exist in the education system, in particular for racialized students and their families. Everyone has the right to safe access to education. It's essential that the funding is provided to schools to allow for the resources to proactively take care of some of the most vulnerable that are in our society, and that's our children. So I think it's very important that we support this resolution today. Thank you.
Thanks, Danica. Alim is the last speaker I have up. Alim.
So hi, everybody. I'm just going to talk on the transit file. So what we're seeing is that in 1996, we got stripped of the operating budget. Now, I know that there's bailout money that they've said is coming from the federal and the provincial levels of government, but it's going to capital budget, so which is for infrastructure. Right now, I know that they're talking about something called micro transit. Out in Western Canada, they refer to it as first mile, last mile. And an example of that is what they do in Innisfil. So Innisfil right now does not have a public transit system. So what they do is they use a ride share program like Uber and Lyft, and the municipality subsidizes that. In the beginning, it was working very well. Now it is not. People are complaining. The price has gone up significantly. And what they're trying to do with the TTC and in our area is look at what they refer to as low density routes. To us, we realize that it's not about low density, it's low profit for them. But a lot of those buses and those routes are in marginalized neighborhoods, and a lot of people are being impacted by that. So what we are doing is we're in favor of the statement. We believe it's pretty accurate. We want to support it. Another thing, I know that the TTC Riders has a petition called Keep Transit Moving. So I'd encourage all of you to sign that as well. I think that's about it. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Alim. Felicia.
Thanks, John, and good evening, Labor Council family. So I'm a teacher. Hey, Alim. I too am a teacher and an executive member with the Elementary Teachers of Toronto. And just to pick up on what my colleagues have already said, there are serious inequities in the system, but I really want to point out that Lecce and Ford are leveraging their media accessibility, and they continue to spread mistruths. So when you see those commercials that talk about how Ontario has invested in education, those investments that they're talking about, we're not seeing them at the school level. So when we talk about the nurses, Lecce can stop talking about all the nurses that were going to be there to help us. We haven't been seeing them in any of our schools. I continue to ask members, are the nurses there? And the answer is still no. I believe there was somewhere in Ontario where it was mentioned that yes, they had a nurse in the school, but from the ads, you would think that they are quite easily found in the school system. They are not. So what we have are teachers being asked to do screening, parents being asked to do screening. And you think if we have nurses to do that work, they would be the ones doing it. So I do want to point out that the nurses that were promised by Lecce and Ford are nowhere to be seen in our system. And things like devices. So you'll remember during negotiations that having online school was a big priority for the government. They are seeing now this is not working as they had mentioned it would, as they said it would. And many of our students don't have appropriate devices in order to do the work, nor do the educators. Educators are often given older devices that can't handle the synchronous learning that Lecce and Ford want to see happening through virtual schooling. So we really need to keep in mind that what they are putting out there, what they are claiming is happening in schools is not happening. And there are great parent groups that are out there supporting and pushing back on Ford and Lecce. And because of that pushback, we've seen them put a few more resources in, but still not enough. And we still need labor to also push. We need our comrades here in labor to be out there pushing and making sure this government knows that we know they are shortchanging education in spite of all the ads that they're putting on the television, in spite of all the press conferences where they're saying things are happening when they are not. The system is struggling, and teachers and educators are trying to do their best for kids, and they are with what they have, but it's not where it needs to be. The boards are scrambling. We're still trying to figure out assignments. Some teachers are still waiting to be placed. It's October 1st. So that's the reality in our schools. So thank you for the statement. And thank you to all of our labor friends and allies out there who are supporting public education and pushing back on this government to ensure that they do right by public education. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Felicia. And thank you to all the education affiliates, the teacher unions and the CUPE locals that have supported the parent activism that's been so important, in shining a light on the problems that are there, as well as the people who are in the classrooms and making the schools safe. So the statement is in front of you. There's the 5 recommendations that I've already read out, and we'll now go to the vote on the statement. If we can put up the vote. And then as we're taking that vote, we, in our Labor Day parade, virtual parade, we included many, many videos that highlighted various elements that are important to our members. And Ali has been working with Nadine McKinnon to pull those videos out and turn them into short segments that we hope that you can share. And we're going to show you the one on education right now. And that motion is carried. We have to get the screen bigger. Okay. And the sound on. Okay, a little technical difficulty, so I'm sure we're getting that fixed.
Our government is failing us to plan and fund a reopening of schools that is safe.
And you can find that on our Facebook page or our YouTube channel, just Labor Council in both cases. Please share that widely, because we do want to remind people that as our York Region educators were telling me last week, that Minister Lecce continues to lie through his teeth about what's actually happening in education right now, and people should remember how much sacrifice went on as teachers and educators and support staff went to the streets this time, starting a year ago, and took job action to try and protect class sizes and the supports that are needed to give our students what they need to succeed. So we are coming up next year to 150 years since this Labor Council was founded. It was April of 1871 that a small handful of workers, and yes, they were all men at the time, came together saying that they wanted something more than just what they bargained with their own employer for wages. They wanted to be able to have a union voice together that would talk about social justice and broader issues of economic justice. In 1947, folks who'd come back from the war and seen the horrors of the Holocaust and seen the horrors of colonialism, as people rose up around the world to demand a different deal, the Toronto Joint Labour Committee on Human Rights was formed to add racial justice into a core part of the work of our council. And in the last 20 to 25 years, as a result of environmental and climate activists, we've added climate justice to our work. So next year, 150 years is pretty special. We are the largest semi-democratic organization in this city. We represent 220,000 members through our affiliates of 148 local unions. And we want to figure out how we should celebrate that best. So we are going to open up a quiz, and then we're going to ask you to go into small discussion groups to brainstorm all the different things we could do, from work in libraries and schools to outdoor art and media, and on and on and on. So Ali, will you put up the quiz? And maybe you should explain how this is going to work as well, Ali.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to sort of see some of you again. 150 years. I mean, Canada, there was buttons, there's all these sort of things. So I think it's probably a good time for us to celebrate as well. The quiz, it's pretty straightforward. You're going to get polls, just like with the motions, to be able to vote, and we'll sort of see how we go. Yeah. So question, let's play from the start. Question 1. The Labor Council was founded in 1871 when the Coopers Union approached 15 labor organizations to form a central body in Toronto. Which of the following professions was not included? Ooh.
Ali, did you want me to launch the poll?
Yes, please.
Oh, I'm sorry, but somebody else has control of the polling session. So if that's you, Mohammed, could you launch the second poll, please, which is Q1?
So you have choice between bakers, cigar makers, tailors, or iron workers.
What about digital media specialists?
I mean, did we even really have electricity in 1871?
Yeah, I think it's as many votes as we'll get.
Okay. Yes, so it's tailors. The central body was created with representatives from coopers, cobblers, shoemakers, bakers, cigar makers, iron molders, and the typographical union. I can still never say that word, printers. And they started off with the campaign for a 9-hour day and were officially granted legal status in Canada in 1872. Question number 2. The slogan, organize, educate, resist, which is our Labor Day theme in 2019, has a rich history in our movement. Originally framed as a call of duty for all working people to understand the deeper social, political, and industrial problems of the day, what year did it first appear as our Labor Day theme? 1898, 1919, 1954, or 1996?
I close the poll in 3, 2, 1.
$1898. So this followed a busy decade as the Labor Council became more entrenched in local politics, from successfully advocating for the public ownership of essential services, including transit, the demilitarization of education, because they argued that it inspired patriotic hatred, and a campaign for improved sanitation of the city. So they were documenting sanitation issues and bringing those to city council. Amazing how some things change and some things really don't. Question 3. Concern over the working conditions of women and children increasingly gained attention in the 1880s. Which women's profession became the first to join the Labor Council in 1883? Teachers, seamstresses, launderers, or shoe fitters? I feel like I should hum the Jeopardy thing, but I won't. Be nice.
You should.
I'm doing it in my head. Mind you, these were all professions that were obviously women's work at the time and that women were heavily involved with. Yes. Da, 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 da.
John, you didn't give me a study guide either. I'm 0 for 2 so far.
Oh, okay. Mohammed, announce the poll before Aleem starts singing.
Okay. Shoe fitters. So by 1886, the council was advocating equal pay for equal work and had successfully lobbied for the first legal protections against child labor, the establishment of weekly working limits, and standardized safety regulations. Don't really know where that went wrong, but anyway, so they're equal pay. But I couldn't believe that 1886, it was Labor Day, was when they were beginning to push for equal pay for equal work. Question 4. Why is Dresden, Ontario significant in the history of Toronto's labor movement? So it was the site of Canada's first general strike, inspiring Toronto labor activists. First town to enter into a joint solidarity partnership with the Toronto Labor Council. Epicenter of the fight for racial equality and freedom against discrimination. Or it was the site of Ontario Health Insurance Policy's first pilot project. Why is Dresden, Ontario?
We're not supposed to be having fun in these meetings. What are you guys doing?
Well, there you have it.
All that right. Well done. So local activist and Black business owner Hugh Burnett took on Dresden's racist establishment by challenging segregation practices with the support of activists like Bromley Armstrong, Toronto Labor, and the Jewish Labor Committee, becoming pioneers of anti-discrimination laws in Canada.
And Hugh Burnett was a member of the Carpenters Union, by the way.
Okay, now, final question. Which of the following were campaigned for by our Labor Council? Toronto Hydroelectric System, the United Way, Labor Day, Toronto Transit Commission, all of the above. Yeah, all of the above. So we've had some wins, we've had some losses, but I mean, the history of the Toronto labor movement is the history of working people in Canada and North America, really. So I'm excited to work with you guys on figuring out how best to celebrate and educate ourselves and the general public about all the great work that we're doing and can continue to do. So thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you. So that was a lot of fun, eh? There's some stuff all of us learned. But now we're going to spend a few minutes going into chat rooms, and Susan's going to talk about how we're going to pick your brains and figure out how to celebrate 150 years in the best possible way.
Thanks,
Susan.
John. Thank you. Yeah, so we are going to break you into groups to have a discussion for about 15 minutes. I'm just going to post the questions that we want you to think about here. And there we are. And so what we want to get your input in, because you know, it could be a full year of celebrating. We know we've got a rich history. We know we've got a rich recent history, and we know we've got you know, some struggles that we need to continue on in the future. So what we'd like you to do in the small groups is to talk about these two questions. The first one is how we should celebrate it. So what kinds of activities or initiatives might we include in those celebrations? Who are the groups and the partners that should be involved or highlighted? And what are the key aspects of the Labor Council and of the labor movement that we should draw attention to? Because 2022 is going to be the 150th anniversary of legalization of unions here. And then the second question is to think about how can we enhance our reputation as unions with young people, as well as across Toronto and York Region's diverse population. So if people want to, some of you've got your phones or whatever, if you want to take a shot of that, but I will also put the questions into the broadcast for the small groups and also put it into the chat function. When you go into your groups, there aren't enough of us to help moderate or anything like that. You're all good leaders. So what we'd like you to do would be to make sure that you pick a timekeeper, as well as someone who can give a quick report when we come back. So we'll give you about 15 minutes and you'll have a 60-second countdown when it's over with. So let me call up the breakout groups. Just take me a minute here. All right. Have fun. And many of you have participated in these before. Those on phones will be transferred over automatically, and those who are online will have to click to join the group. Away you go. Have fun.
Hello?
John and Joe, you don't want to go and join a group? I see Jean-Philippe hasn't gone over yet. Carmela, Ingrid, if you want to go and join a group, I'm sure they'd appreciate your participation.
Hello?
Yes, hi.
Hi, you can hear me?
I can. That's Ingrid.
Yeah, sorry. I was trying to figure out how to work this. Okay. So I'm in a group.
Well, no, you're actually in the main room.
Oh,
Are,
uh-oh.
are you, yeah, you should see something in front of you that lets you agree to join.
I didn't see it, actually. Just sitting here waiting for something and I didn't see anything. So,
Let me see. You know what? I'll move you to,
yeah.
I'm going to move you to a different group and hopefully something else will come up for you. Okay,
Okay,
away we go.
thank you. Oh, got it. Thank you.
Okay, have fun.
Sorry, I got bumped out. Can you put me back into a room?
It's all finished, and so everybody will be coming back with you in about 60 seconds.
Perfect.
I will see it, Nigel, if I can find out.
It's okay. No worries. I wait here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, 47 seconds and counting.
Okay, no problem.
Hopefully
I'll
people
hang
had
out.
some good discussions. And if you want to start putting stuff into the chat, that would be great, because we'll probably only have a couple of minutes to take it up. And of course, anything that goes in there, we can save. So if you had some great ideas in your session, please load them into the chat.
Okay.
Anybody have any really fun ideas?
I missed like some of them, but I mean, I think I'm not sure. I'm not sure because I got plugged out. I got bumped out. I mean, I lost my connection.
Oh, I see. Gotcha. And when you came back in, you weren't in the group.
Yeah, and so when I come back, I guess I come to you.
So John, do you want to handle the report back? You're on mute.
Do that, Susan.
Okay, sure. So when we went into the groups, we asked each person if you could pick a reporter, and we still have some things that we need to get through on the agenda tonight, including hearing about Toronto City Council vacancy and an important election fight coming up. So I'm going to ask each reporter to keep it to a minute or less. The first group, and you know what? So why doesn't somebody volunteer who was a reporter from one of the groups?
I'll do it.
Go ahead, Aaron.
All right, quickly. We suggested comparing old pictures, new pictures, and what strikes were like in the past versus how we deal with strikes now. Talked about this for the first question on how we engage, and looking at timelines, like a history timeline, who joined when, celebrating all the different parts, see the numbers. How did the numbers of the Labor Council grow, and when was our peak? Are we at our peak still? Things like that in a pictorial form. And then highlighting things like solidarity. A big aspect is both our solidarity between different unions. If you drive past a strike, everyone honks, people bring coffee, but then are incorporated into our communities, and how we don't know our neighbors as much anymore, but we can identify our neighbors who are labor because usually they have a sign in front. So proudly putting signs on our lawns and things like that, and engaging that way and celebrating who we are and our actions. And then for the second part in the engagement of the younger generation, Speaker's Corner was brought up. We can bring back a Labor Council Speaker's Corner, which everyone was excited about. And as well, the Young Workers Committee, re-energizing that and really bringing in some new faces. There's probably new people that have never even heard of Labor Council, that this would be an opportunity to sit down, and giving the young workers space for their issues. We said that the issues we fight for, both the environment, labor issues, things like that, those were issues of the past. They're still issues of the present, but the issues have changed and they're owned differently throughout the generations. So giving it room for the young workers to own those issues and guide us on how they want us to help them support their issues is a big aspect.
That took a little more than a minute, but you were brave enough to volunteer to go first. So
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, who'd like to go next?
I can speak on behalf of our group.
Thanks, Justin.
I'll try and keep this brief. To piggyback on the last idea, one of the ideas that we came up with was a regional scavenger hunt. You take the map, but you actually have, the time where the union halls for each of the different unions are open, or sites around the city that are significant to the union movement, and have whatever little scavenger hunt tidbits are available at each of those kind of locations to open up the doors, as we would say, to the union halls, to everyone, not just the union members of those locals. Further to opening the doors, having places in each union hall or at union meetings to celebrate the history of the labor movement in Toronto, and have each union actually create a package about their history so that it can be reported, so you can learn about, you know, your kins in the labor movement and what their actual history is. So you're not just knowing the history of your own local, but the history of all the locals in the city, because there's so much rich, deep history that can be shared from local to local. As well as, you know, having ways to highlight labor gain, you know, throughout the year, you know, special dates in the labor movement along the city of Toronto.
Okay, thanks, Justin. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say quickly on the other one, you know, to engage is also to you know, using more TikTok and infographics in social media to engage more people in the younger generations in the labor movement.
Thank you. Danica, I see you were putting information into the chat. Were you a reporter for your group as well? Do you want to elaborate on anything, or are you satisfied with what you put into the chat? Okay, thanks very much for that. A fourth group.
I could go. So we talked about, I guess, some key milestones in labor history or Labor Council history. And so one of the things we thought about doing something about is the history of the 8-hour workday. We also talked about the Potable Water Act, which apparently the Plumbers Union was involved in that. We talked about the days of action during the Harris government, and that there were certain rabble-rousers who were arrested during that, such as John Cartwright, I think, was arrested. And we talked about there's a construction site where Harris was trying to give a campaign speech where that had happened. There was also a GST protest as well. And then when we talked about the kind of groups we'd like to include, one group we had thought of was 15 and Fairness. They've done a lot of good work. And as far as getting young people involved, Pam Beetlestone suggested a model based around the York Communities for Public Education. So this is a group that includes parents and high school students that are advocating for better public education. And there's a lot of high school students that get really involved and energized. So it's not a union thing per se, but it's a way to get younger people involved. And that's what we had.
Okay, thanks a lot, Sunny. 4 more groups to go. Who'd like to report next?
I can go. Am I on? So one suggestion is that we encourage every union to reach out to all their members, teaching their own union history and that of Labor Council. That Labor Council highlights different themes each month. That we build a history tree that shows how unions developed, when they came together, when they joined Labor Council, and that Labor Council has been a proud campaigner for public infrastructure in the past, so that for 2021, we should do a special campaign for a public infrastructure campaign to celebrate. For young people, we thought of soliciting skits like was done at the environmental conference at the CNE one year to dramatize our history, to do a song contest aimed at young people, that they would produce a hip hop song or a song with labor issues in mind, hand out bags aimed at young people that we would distribute, and to encourage more unions to get students involved in their structure on placements.
Thanks, David. And I suspect that there are probably 1 or more groups out
Sure,
there who
I can
also
speak.
talked about.
Carolyn?
Carolyn, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thanks very much. We had a very dynamic group, and we obviously, I think like everyone, it's not going to be one event, but a number of events over the year to keep this going and to look at it in our history, our present, our future as well, and suggestions that we showcase the different sectors, the education sector, public sector, industrial, hotels, all the varying areas, transit, so people get a sense of the breadth of what we do, and also highlight the campaigns we've been involved in, the anti-racist campaigns and the green jobs, decent wages, all of that, and to really highlight, as others have said, the whole question of youth activism, appreciating the youth who've been in the streets for climate action, for Black Lives Matter, and as well the other groupings that we've connected with, like T, Progress Toronto, etc., giving a real sense that labor and community are one and the same. We come from communities, we happen to be labor, and the interconnectedness of that. We're fighting not for ourselves, but for others. And I mean, there were a whole range of potential ideas, but I think also it was brought up that use this as a year to build toward the upcoming provincial election, to really bring politics to the fore there and allow people to see what we've been fighting for and why we need real change at every level. And I think also the whole question of organizing and organizing youth, organizing gig workers, and connecting with those like those in the Fedora and others who've been a part of organizing drives, and really use it to just make it Labor's year in this city. And there's so many suggestions that we can move forward with, but lots of ideas.
Thank you. I know there's at least one other group.
I'll report back from our group. So we talked about a then, now, and next. So then the fight for Medicare, now the fight for pharmacare, but then also linking it to what the future of fights over care and health might be. We talked about profiles of solidarity. So telling the stories of labor leaders from the past. So previous presidents, but also people like Burnett or Bromley, or but also making sure that we highlight leaders of different ethnic communities to sort of allow people from all different backgrounds to see leadership, to see their descendants in leadership, and maybe even trying to find the living relatives of people today. And then we also talked about a gala and having a party, once we can get out of the pandemic, with music showcase so that we can all meet up again and dance and have fun and use it as a fundraiser.
Thank you, Ali. Any last comments? I think that covered off all the groups. I'm sure there are also ideas about how to make sure that we're not just representing, but showing the richness of the cultural growth that we've done as Toronto and York region. So feel free to share more ideas, but you've provided us with a bunch of really dynamic ideas, both about telling history through the labor movement, as well as giving a whole range of different ways of activities and celebrations for over a year. Thank you very much. I'll turn it back over to John now to carry us on to the next part of the agenda.
Thanks, Susan. Lots to think about. And in my group, I did mention that Sheet Metal Workers Union had created a beautiful copper time capsule for the city's sesquicentennial, and it's down at City Hall. Beautiful glowing copper with a bunch of historical things that are in there. They're going to be opened at some point in the future. But speaking of City Hall, Jim Karagianis, who is was a member of Parliament and City Councillor, was removed for violating a whole number of requirements within the spending and election, is finally exhausted his appeal system, and he's removed from office. Jim is a very controversial guy, but he also was a very strong supporter of QP 416 in their fight against privatization of garbage. And so, not without a lot of sides to him. Mohammed will report on that vacancy and what's going to be happening with that.
Yeah, I'd say, controversial is a nice way of putting that. Jimmy Karagianis said a lot of things that I think were quite disturbing and harmful to people. But yes, he also did, he saved, him and a few other folks were the deciding factor in saving a few thousand jobs for 416 members as well. And he did go walk around saying he had 4 union cards in his wallet. Yeah, so definitely a mixed history of involvement. His seat has been declared vacant by the city clerk. However, City Council today was going to decide whether they hold a by-election or an appointment. From our estimation of speaking to members of council, we think that there's a strong desire to see a election, but when there's a lot of time for people to decide, which they now have, because today they decided to bump the decision to whether they have an appointment or whether they have an election to the following city council meeting, where they will decide that. We think at this point that there's a strong level of support for the election, but you never know. what happens in like when there's a lot of time for things for people to think about things and politics to have a place in that conversation. If, however, though, there is an election, we're expecting that election to happen somewhere towards the end of January. And there will be, I'm sure, a number of candidates who are going to run. And yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, and we'll go through our process with our municipal committee and our executive board of trying to come in behind the best candidate. And having grown up in Scarborough, I'm always hoping that there's going to be many more progressive city councillors from Scarborough. In our statement, Recovery Ontario, we talked about helping to drive the Canadian Labour Congress's national campaign called Canadian Plan, Forward Together. So we're going to show one of the videos from that, and then Heather is going to, from the CLC, will speak to the campaign.
And sorry, folks, it's just going to take me a minute to get that video up here. So
And then after Heather will be the council projects and committee reports, just to put people on notice to be ready to speak.
My name is Bonnie Castleman. I'm a cashier at a grocery store. During the pandemic, it was very stressful, of course, high alert. It's all new to everybody. There's no rules implemented yet, and you're tired all the time, mentally and physically. I have a husband who's at a high health risk, so I had to really think about my choices here, and I mean, I just tried to do as much health things as I could. Masks, of course, cleaning, which we are still doing a lot of. I talked to my husband about it. He agreed that to work during the pandemic, I just have to be very, very careful. But I mean, there were days I come home and I would just cry. I'd just have a good cry. It's a slap in the face to have no sick days, definitely. We went back to the 1800s. Instead of moving forward, we really need to fight for this, especially people putting their lives at risk. Yes. I'm thrilled that the unions have pushed for sick leave for everyone. I mean, we all need it. It can make a big difference between, buying groceries, paying your rent. We need the union. We have to have this together. Everybody does, because look, it's already proven they have taken the pandemic pay away. There isn't any sick days. There is no protection. So everybody has to fight for all these things, and we have to keep going. Minimum wage needs to be up there too.
Heather.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. Just so everyone on this call knows, that's one of several videos that is on the canadianplan.ca website. So if you haven't checked it out yet, please go there right now. It's www.canadianplan.ca. And I just want to start off by saying it's meant a lot to me to hear from all of the affiliates tonight and what you've been going through as far as back to school, what it's been like in the healthcare system. I know that every one of us is tired right now, myself included. So, I'm with you every step of the way, and I'm here to share a couple pieces of good news, but also a lot of ways that we need to keep the fire burning. So John already spoke towards the speech from the throne, and as he alluded to, there were some promising things in there, talking about a national childcare program. Well, the Liberals have made many, many promises on that over the years. It was the first time since the 80s that it was in the speech from the throne. There was certainly quite a bit of talk on pharmacare, a great deal on the 1 million new jobs with a focus on green jobs, and also looking at what we can do to bring long-term care finally into the public arm rather than the private arm, which we've seen is so disastrous, and we've just already lost so many lives. I can't imagine what it's like for seniors in those facilities right now and the workers. So, lots of promises. It sure sounds good on paper, but until we actually see some action and we see a budget that reflects that these things are going to happen, they're really just words. So I really can't stress enough for you to please go to that website. There's lots of ways to either send a letter to your MP or MPP. It's a letter that's already made up for you, but you can tailor it however you want. And we all know that once it's from the heart, it goes a lot further. So please do take just even 2 minutes to partake in the many actions that are on that page. I wanted to also speak towards some of the progress we've made with Bill C2 and the paid sick day leaves. So in Bill C2, there's quite a bit of work underway to see that, there's going to need to be more cross-jurisdictional efforts made to really cross the finish line with paid sick leave. So looking at changes at the Canadian Labor Code, but also the Employment Standards Code in the provinces. So the CLC will be further engaging the federations of labor and labor councils to ensure that we're making the biggest splash that we can and really making that happen. We're all, very aware that we're entering the second wave and how important it is to have protected sick leave is just absolutely paramount. What many of you may know, the CERB is coming to a close. But as of September 21st, the Government of Canada has introduced some changes to EI. So there has been some EI reform that the labor movement has been fighting towards for a very long time. So there's going to be, the main changes to notice is that there's now a minimum cap of, a minimum threshold of $400. So if your EI is less than that, because of your insurable hours and how much you were making, you can't make less than that in EI. They've also changed it to have 120 hours to qualify for EI, which is down from the low end of what it used to be of 420 hours. So, I partook in the CLC webinar earlier this week that was on EI reform, and we had experts from across the country about those gains. And we had a speaker from 15 in Fairness that did a tremendous job. And she said, these gains that we've made to EI reform are truly monumental. Now we need to fight to make sure that we keep them past the 1 year date that they've said. So it was a year from September 27th. Lastly, they've also introduced new streams as far as recovery benefits. So there's 3 new streams: Canada Recovery Benefit, Canada Recovery Sickness Benefit, and Canada Recovery Caregiving Benefit. So the first is $400 a week, the second is $500 a week, and the third being $500 a week, to either care for a loved one. So, I know a lot of people were very worried about the end of the CERB, and the CLC has been fighting nonstop in order to make sure that there are streams of revenue as more and more people continue to lose their jobs due to the pandemic. So that is the main highlights for me. I do have a 1-page document that I'm going to share with you as well. Please share it far and wide. It has 3 pillars of our campaign and really what we're striving towards. The more that we can engage our members, the more that we can share this with the general public, the louder we are to decision makers. So it is very important. I've also been asked by several local unions to do presentations virtually, similar to the one that I did for this this general membership last month. So if you're interested in that, I'm very happy to do so. If there's any further materials that I can be of support with, I am certainly here for that. So I will put that link in, and I will also put the 1-page document for you to please share far and wide. There's a printable version and there's a online version. So thanks so much for your time tonight, and solidarity.
Good. Thanks, Heather. Next, we have projects or committees. Is anybody reporting on any of that? And I'll just make sure I'm looking at participants.
Yeah, I think Laura will be reporting on the Women's Committee,
Okay.
and I suspect Danica will be reporting on the Equity Committee.
Okay, Laura. I'm not seeing either of them yet. So
Danica has her hand up.
okay, sorry, Danica.
Hi, thank you. Just a quick update that the Equity Committee, we're working on an IWalk webinar that we hope to have ready by the end of next month, we're in October, yes, by the end of November. And so just wanted to let people, give people the heads up that that's on the works. Thank you.
Okay, and I just put a link on the chat to CBC Radio Noon Show today, where Chris Campbell of the Carpenters, who's spoken to our delegates, I think last month, about the nooses on construction site. He was part of a very hard-hitting show, and the link is there on your chat room. Laura, go ahead.
Hi, this is Laura Thompson, OPSU Local 503, reporting to the Women's Committee. So we met earlier today. So some of you are familiar with the Sisters of the Round Table, which is sessions that we've organized over the last few years to give sisters, women, and gender diverse people within the labor movement a space to sort of share experiences and build solidarity. So we have been discussing how to do that virtually. So as it is, we're going forward with Sisters of the Roundtable, specifically COVID-19, a gendered perspective on COVID-19. So we're breaking it down to a series of sessions. So the first session would be November 3rd. And the focus there is sort of frontline experiences and sort of speaking to the reality and the resilience that's come with that reality, but also working towards a just recovery for all, ultimately. So the first session would be November 3rd, and then the follow-up session from that would be the following Tuesday, November 10th, and then November 17th and November 24th. Admittedly, I'm saying all these dates without my calendar in front of me, but yeah, so those are the dates we have going forward. And along with the experience of frontline workers, we're hoping to have conversations around women confronting racism and anti-Black racism, ending gender-based violence, and a just recovery for all. As well, we wanted to recognize, so going back some years, we put forward a motion to get Labor Council to recognize early childcare worker and early childhood educator appreciation day. So I am just gonna share a statement. So October 22nd, 2020 is the 20th annual Childcare Worker and Early Childhood Educator Appreciation Day. This year's theme is Rising Up. This day recognizes the commitment, hard work, and education of early childhood educators and all staff who work with young children. From government cuts to the COVID-19 pandemic, the childcare sector has faced many challenges this year. The workers have risen to the challenge and are now rising up to call for better wages, working conditions, and support for the sector. Each year, the day is proclaimed by municipalities and school boards across Ontario and marked in hundreds of childcare centers. Orders are now being accepted for buttons and posters that acknowledge the 20th annual Childcare Worker and Early Childhood Educator Appreciation Day. So momentarily, I'll share a link with folks in the chat that'll give you more information if you're looking to order buttons or posters to commemorate this day. I think with the pandemic, it's been a very powerful reminder in the sense of how crucial and critical childcare is to working families, but also how undervalued it is for those individuals doing that work. So I think certainly that's been an ongoing issue for some time, but I think among the things that made it very clear within this pandemic, yeah, our appreciation of childcare workers. Yeah, and other than that, that's it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Faduma, and then after Faduma, we'll move to reports of local unions. Faduma?
So we are still running the Yes It Matters campaign, and we have members who are volunteering with us tonight here, David, Judith, and we have more people there, so Ainsworth and Joyce Davis. So I thank all unionists who have endorsed the Charter of Inclusive Workplace and Society, and there are some still who haven't endorsed it. We'll be following up with you. And those who have endorsed it, and I thank again those who took the next step and started implementing some of the actions in the engagement plan, and everybody else, who really needs any assistance in furthering the engagement plan, we are here to help you out. And the other campaign that we are running is the Refugee Next Door. It also started the same time at Yes It Matters, because at the time, refugee issues were in highlight in Canada. But the refugee blight is still going on, and the around 70 million refugees are stranded somewhere who need help. And I know a lot of unions have sponsored refugees during the Syrian refugee crisis, and we are working on that project to encourage people to think sponsoring a family somewhere, saving them their lives. And also, we are preparing a final slide that you can go through and see the history of refugees and what you can do now. And the last thing I want to say is that United Way campaign has launched it, and the United Way is facing this year a very difficult time as the campaign might not go as well as it went last year because of all people who have lost their jobs. Nevertheless, the need is very high in the community. A lot of organizations need more money from the United Way that they don't have. So I will really ask you, please, consider doing more this year for everybody who has been doing. And if you really need any help in launching a campaign or getting campaign material, contact either Marcia or myself or Rochelle, our new staff at Labor Community Services. Thank you.
Thanks, Halima. Okay, we're up now for reports of unions. Are there any unions? Put your hand up, and I see David Kidd. I know 353 wants to report, so that's Aaron, and then Justin. David?
Yes, I just want to make a quick report on behalf of the Toronto Workers' History Project. For the next 3 Sundays at 4 o'clock, we are doing a collaboration with the Canadian Labour International Film Festival. This Sunday at 4, there's a screening of The Ballad of John Henry. It's a re-looking at the infamous song of John Henry. I think people would enjoy it. But on October 14th, we are doing our second webinar. This will be on Chinese Canadian workers in Toronto. Someone we all know well, Winnie Ng, will be one of the presenters, and we welcome you all to attend. twhp.ca for further information and to join our webinar. Thank you.
Okay, Aaron, followed by Justin.
Just to announce, so last year, everyone remembered we ran a dodgeball tournament in November. Obviously this year, our 5th annual, we can't because of COVID. So we are attempting to plan for and hopefully bring up a cornhole tournament or beanbag toss. It's a tournament that's usually done in the States, and we got an idea from our brothers and sisters down south. It will be socially distanced. We put in a lot of different measures. We're fingers crossed that we will be able to hold this event. It's going to really depend on what's happening in the rules and everything like that. But at the very least, it is a fundraiser. A lot of these foundations are having a hard time raising funds at this time as well. So a few people here I know supported us, and even a few did play last time with the dodgeball. So we're going to try to attempt this again. We have flyers. We're going to be sending it out, and our email is nextg@ibw353.org. And we're looking to try to bring everyone back and at least have a little bit of fun, even if we're always 6 feet apart.
Great, thanks, Aaron. Justin?
Hi, Justin Anthony, IATC Local 58, Toronto Stagehands. I just wanted to bring up us in the live entertainment industry have been devastated these past 7 months now due to COVID-19. Over 80% of our members have been out of work since beginning of March, and those that are working right now are working very sporadically at best. Last week, there was a national event called Light Up Live, and I want to thank both John and Ali for helping us amplify this message last week. Light Up Live was a day of recognition for people who work in the live entertainment sector across Canada to bring awareness to the amount of people who are out of work. And this was taken up where people, theaters, concert halls, the Toronto sign, CN Tower, all tourist attractions across Canada lit their buildings red to honor the workers who are out of work. Over 670 different theaters, concert halls, and attractions took part in it last week. The Light Up Live hashtag got over 11 million distinct views on social medias to bring awareness to this campaign and to the amount of workers, union workers, non-unionized workers, people who are really struggling to get through this pandemic. Most of us in this sector, we're part of the gig economy. That's the way that it worked for us. While the wage subsidies are great for people who are working, it doesn't work for people who work in the gig economy. So it's been a real struggle. So Please remember that of the workers who are out of work in this sector, and it's still going to be a long time before we get back to work, because it's going to be even safe to even think about gathering in large gatherings. So I just wanted to remind you to think of Local 58 members and people working behind the scenes in live entertainment through this pandemic.
Thanks, Justin. Any other unions to report? I'm not seeing any, so I just report on one event that did happen since our last meeting. As everybody knows, there's been a series of nooses found on construction sites, evidence of hate crime that our entire industry has spoken up and said is completely unacceptable. And the original incidents helped spark our statement, zero tolerance for racism in construction. In the earlier last month, Mayor Tory convened a meeting with all the major developers in the city to ask them what they were going to do around this issue. And then subsequently, we had a meeting with all of the different construction union leaders with Mayor Tory to put forward a number of commitments on behalf of the different construction unions about taking on issues of racism and challenging race hatred, and also recommended a series of actions that the city could help us creating a strong multi-party statement about zero tolerance in the construction industry, asking the city to pass that as a policy and include it in their bid documents, so that when constructors and contractors are bidding on city work, they will be committing not just to uphold the Human Rights Act, but actually go much further and explicitly state their zero tolerance for construction. So we're now working with a group of employers as well as the city, the Confronting Anti-Black Racism unit at the City of Toronto, to try and continue to build around this issue and make it really clear that that is not acceptable in Toronto. And if there's nobody else to report, I'll just make one mention of, okay, see Susan's hand up. Susan?
Yeah, I might just mention that there's some hopeful news on the climate action front. The Young Fridays for Future Toronto students at universities and high schools managed to hold really quite a successful civil disobedience event last Friday afternoon down at the corner of Bay and Wellesley, and numbering in the hundreds. They shut down the intersection, socially distanced, following the group rules for no more than 25 people in one place at one time. Police had to shut down the roads around it, and they spent 3 hours spreading the message about the need for a just recovery for all. They really understand the just transition idea for workers. It was really great to see it there. It was the middle of the afternoon, so there weren't a lot of union members there, but Jinky David, on behalf of the library workers, spoke representing young workers along with her daughter. So, some hopeful messages there, and a good fight together with the young people.
So what I was going to mention is, we're incredibly proud of our presence in the City of Toronto, as we talked about celebrating 150th anniversary, but we're also being, a people that, since First Nations gave us the name Toronto, our families have come from every part of this world, right? Over 194 countries. Many of our families came as refugees. And internationalism has always been part of our outlook as a labor movement in Toronto. If you remember when the terrible collapse, the Rana Plaza garment factory in Bangladesh collapsed, killing hundreds of garment workers, almost all women, terribly paid. The world was shocked, and there was a demand that the big global retailers actually force safety and decent working conditions in the suppliers that provide garments, and particularly set in Bangladesh. And I was asked by one of our own union members who was active in for Local 40 to come to a fundraising television event for the Bangladeshi community. And there was a series of people from the different walks of life in the Bangladeshi community, and they were doing a big telefundraising for the victims of Rana Plaza. And then they had a musical interlude, and they had a choir singing a song. Now, I don't understand a word of Bangladeshi, but in between the Bangladeshi words, as I started listening to the melody, then I heard the words John Henry. And John Henry, and then blah, 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 in Bangladeshi, and then John Henry again. And I said to Victor Gomes, Victor, what is this going on? He said, in our labor movement in Bangladesh, we have always been strong internationalists, believing in strong international solidarity. That song was about the struggle of US workers and Black workers for dignity. We've adopted as our own. We sing it in our language, and it's about who we are as a movement. And so if you have a chance to go and see that movie, John Henry, I don't know if David's still around, if you could put it up on the chat, or we'll try and send a link out through social media. You know, culture is part of what keeps us together, even in the darkest times. Workers have looked to culture, have looked to song, have looked to art and music and film in order to sustain our soul. So, you know, we've got lots of work to do, but let's remember to celebrate and learn about each other and our own tremendous struggles as we go forward on this journey. Thanks very much, sisters and brothers, for joining us tonight. We'll see you 1 month from now in November. Take care.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye. Have a good night.
All the best to everybody.